You check your investment account again. It says $86,000. Last year it was $72,000. The year before that it was $61,000. You're doing everything right. You max your Roth. You automate $800 a month into index funds. You don't carry credit card debt. You don't lease luxury cars. You say no to trips you can't afford. You watch personal finance videos at 11:30 p.m. when you should be sleeping. And yet, you've been hovering between $70,000 and $95,000 for what feels like forever. Every time you get close to $100,000, something happens. The market dips. Your car needs repairs. You move apartments. You take a vacation because I deserve it. Suddenly you're back at $83,000. Or $89,000, or $76,000. You feel close, but not through. And that's the most frustrating place in personal finance. Here's the thing, most people believe the first $100,000 is hard because you don't have enough money invested yet. That's the common explanation. It's incomplete. The real reason $100,000 is the hardest milestone is because at that level, your behavior still matters more than your investments. But it doesn't feel that way anymore. You're in this psychological gray zone where compounding hasn't fully taken over, but your income and lifestyle are big enough to sabotage you. And that's where people stall. My name is Tom, and I spend way too much time thinking about wealth building psychology and financial momentum. If you're someone who keeps grinding, saving, and still feels stuck below six figures, make sure to hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Let's break this down calmly, step by step. First, the math. Assume you invest $800 per month. That's $9,600 per year. Let's round to $10K for simplicity. If your portfolio earns 7% annually, which is a reasonable long-term real return assumption, here's what happens. At $10,000, a 7% return gives you $700. At $50,000, it gives you $3,500. At $90,000, it gives you $6,300. At $100,000, it gives you $7,000. Now pause. If you're investing $10K per year and earning $6,300 from returns, your contributions still matter more than compounding. You are still the engine. Your discipline is still the dominant variable. And that's exhausting because you don't feel rich, but you're no longer broke. You're in this awkward middle ground where your savings rate determines everything, but your lifestyle has already expanded enough to compete with it. According to data from the Federal Reserve's Survey of Consumer Finances, the median net worth for households under 35 is dramatically lower than most people assume. The majority are nowhere near six figures in investable assets. So when you approach $100,000, you start to feel like you've made it, but you haven't reached escape velocity yet. Think about a rocket leaving Earth. The first stage burns the most fuel. It fights gravity. It's loud. It's unstable. That's $0 to $100,000. Gravity is lifestyle creep. Gravity is social comparison. Gravity is I work hard. I deserve better. Now here's where the flawed mental model kicks in. People assume wealth grows linearly with effort. Work harder, earn more, save more, eventually get rich. But wealth actually grows exponentially. Once compounding becomes the dominant force. At $100,000, it hasn't yet. Let's compare two scenarios. Person A reaches $100,000 at age 30. They continue investing $10K per year at 7%. By age 40, they'll have roughly $236,000. By age 50, about $507,000. By age 60, roughly $1 million. Now person B reaches $100,000 at 30 and then stops contributing entirely. No more savings. Zero additional investment. Just let it compound at 7%. By age 40, about $196,000. By age 50, about $386,000. By age 60, about $761,000. That's the power of compounding. But here's the brutal part. Between $100,000 and about $300,000, your behavior still matters more than the market. If person A gets lazy and reduces contributions from $10K per year to $3K per year because they upgraded apartments and financed a new SUV, that small shift compounds in the wrong direction, and psychologically, this is where loss aversion kicks in. Loss aversion says we feel losses about twice as strongly as gains. When your portfolio drops from $98,000 to $88,000, you feel that deeply. It feels like you went backwards. Even though zoomed out, you're still massively ahead of where you were 3 years ago. So what do people do? They freeze. They stop investing during downturns, or worse, they sell, which mathematically guarantees they stall below $100,000. Let's do real numbers. You have $95,000 invested, market drops 20%, you're at $76,000. If you panic and sell, and the market recovers the following year by 20%, which is not unusual after sharp drops, you miss that recovery. You'd need a 25% gain just to get back to $95,000. This is why behavioral mistakes hurt more at this stage, because the dollar amounts are finally big enough to feel real. At $10,000, a $2,000 drop is annoying. At $90,000, an $18,000 drop feels catastrophic, even though percentage-wise, it's the same. Your brain does not think in percentages, it thinks in absolute pain. Now, layer lifestyle creep on top of that. When you're building from $0 to $50,000, your identity is still, I'm trying to get ahead. You pack lunches, you drive an older car, you decline expensive nights out, but around $70,000 to $100,000, something subtle shifts. You start comparing yourself upward. Your coworker buys a $45,000 car. Your friend puts $20,000 down on a condo. Your social feed fills with travel and restaurants, and you think, I have almost $100,000. I'm responsible. I can afford this. Mathematically, maybe you can, but here's the trade-off no one quantifies for you. That $20,000 you pull from investments for a down payment on a more expensive home, if left invested at 7% for 30 years, it becomes about $152,000. That $45,000 car financed at 6% over 5 years, total cost maybe $52,000. If instead you bought a $20,000 used car and invested the difference, $25,000, that could grow to about $190,000 over 30 years. These are not small trade-offs. These are six-figure decisions disguised as lifestyle upgrades, and at $100,000, you're making them emotionally, not mathematically. Now you might be thinking, okay Tom, so are you saying I should live like a monk until I'm a millionaire? No, I'm saying understand the physics of this stage. At $100,000, you're pushing a boulder uphill. At $300,000, the hill starts flattening. At $500,000, gravity starts helping you. Let's quantify that. At $300,000, 7% gives you $21,000 per year. If you're investing $10K annually, the market is now contributing twice what you are. At $500,000, 7% is $35,000 per year. At that point, even if you invest nothing, your portfolio grows more than many people's annual contributions. That's when wealth starts to feel automatic. But most people never experience that because they stall at $100,000. Why? Short-term bias. Humans are wired for immediate reward. The IMF and World Bank have published extensive research on household savings behavior globally. Across developed economies, savings rates rise and fall with confidence in asset prices. When markets go up, people spend more. When markets drop, people save less or panic. It's pro-cyclical behavior, exactly backward. At $100,000, your portfolio is finally large enough to tempt you. You see $6,000 annual gains in a good year. You think that's a vacation. You see $10,000 gains in a great year. You think that's a car upgrade. Instead of recognizing that gain is the beginning of your financial engine. Common advice says reward yourself along the way. And look, psychologically that matters. But here's where I dismantle that advice. If every time you hit a milestone, you increase your fixed expenses, you reset the difficulty, you never let the compounding base solidify, you celebrate progress by weakening the foundation. That's like adding weight to the bar. Every time you barely complete a rep, eventually you fail. Here's another scenario. Two people reach $100,000 at 32. Person A keeps living on $60,000 income even after raises, investing aggressively. Person B increases lifestyle proportionally with income. By 40, person A might be at $280,000. Person B might be at $160,000. The gap is not because person B is irresponsible. It's because their savings rate fell from 25% to 8%. Savings rate is the hidden lever at this stage. Not stock picking, not crypto, not side hustles, savings rate. If you earn $80,000 and invest $10K, that's 12.5%. If you earn $100,000 and still invest $10K, that's 10%. If you increase lifestyle so much that you invest only $5K, that's 5%. Now let's project $5K per year versus $15K per year over 20 years at 7%. $5K per year becomes roughly $204,000. $15K per year becomes roughly $612,000. That's a $400,000 difference created by behavior, not brilliance. Behavior. Here's the psychological trap. When you're below $20,000, your goal is survival. When you're above $500,000, your goal is optimization. But between $50,000 and $150,000, your goal is identity. You want to feel successful. You want external confirmation that your discipline meant something. So you upgrade visible consumption, better apartment, nicer wardrobe, newer car. Because your net worth is invisible, and humans crave visible signals. That's status signaling, and it's incredibly powerful, but status signaling drains compounding fuel. Let's get uncomfortable. If you have $90,000 invested, and you increase monthly spending by $1.5K because of a nicer place and a car payment, that's $18K per year. Over 10 years, that's $180,000 not invested. At 7%, that $18K annual investment would have grown to about $250,000 over a decade. You traded $250,000 future net worth for a slightly nicer present. And again, I'm not saying never upgrade, I'm saying understand the math. Now here's the shift in perspective. $100,000 is not a finish line, it's a threshold. Below it, you rely on effort. Above roughly $300,000, you begin to rely on momentum. Most people stall because they treat $100,000 as validation instead of ignition. Validation says, I did it. Ignition says, now it gets interesting. If you can maintain or increase your savings rate for just 5 more years after hitting $100,000, everything changes. Let's simulate that. You hit $100,000 at 30. Instead of relaxing, you push. You invest $20K per year for 5 years. At 7% by 35, you're around $250,000. Now, compounding gives you about $17,000 per year. If you then reduce contributions slightly to $10K per year, by 45 you're near $600,000. That's escape velocity. But if at 30 you hit $100,000 and think, I've earned breathing room, and reduce contributions to $5K per year. At 35, you might only be at $160,000. At 45, maybe $320,000. The difference by midlife can be hundreds of thousands. And here's the most counterintuitive insight. The discipline required from $100,000 to $300,000 is actually harder than from $0 to $100,000. Why? Because early on, deprivation feels normal. Later, deprivation feels optional. You know you could spend more. That's harder psychologically. It's like dieting when there's no food in the house versus dieting when the pantry is full. Now imagine doing nothing. You hover around $100,000 for a decade. You invest inconsistently. You withdraw occasionally. You average maybe $3K per year in contributions. After 10 years at 7%, you might be around $180,000. Not terrible, but not transformative. Meanwhile, someone who stayed consistent could be at $300,000 or more. That gap compounds forever. This is why the $100,000 milestone is the hardest, not mathematically, psychologically. It's the point where you have enough to feel comfortable, but not enough to be free. And comfort is the enemy of momentum. So what do disciplined people do differently? They reframe the milestone. Instead of asking, what can I afford now? They ask, what does this $100,000 become if I protect it? They treat it like seed capital, not spending power. They automate aggressively. They increase contributions when income rises. They resist permanent lifestyle inflation. They allow temporary treats, not structural upgrades, because structural upgrades are expensive. A one-time $2,000 trip is not the same as a $900 per month car payment. One is a moment. The other is gravity, and gravity compounds too. Look, wealth building is not about being perfect. It's about not sabotaging yourself at key thresholds. $100,000 is one of those thresholds. If you can get through it without expanding your fixed expenses dramatically. If you can handle a $15,000 drawdown without panic selling. If you can maintain a 20% savings rate when friends are upgrading everything, you separate from the median trajectory. Remember, the majority of households never accumulate substantial investable assets. That's not because they're incapable, it's because they follow their instincts at exactly the wrong time. Instinct says, you've worked hard, relax. Strategy says, you're finally positioned, accelerate. And acceleration at this stage is disproportionately powerful. Think of it like pushing a flywheel. The first rotations are brutal, then it starts moving, then it spins. Most people push hard until it barely starts moving, and then stop, right before momentum builds. So here's the reframe. $100,000 is not proof you've made it. It's proof you're capable of discipline. Now the question becomes, can you sustain it when it's no longer urgent? That's the game. And if you win that game, even for just 5 to 10 more years, your future self benefits in ways that are very hard to overstate. Because once compounding overtakes contribution, once your portfolio earns $30,000 in a year without you doing anything, once downturns feel like opportunities instead of threats, the psychology flips. And wealth stops feeling fragile, it starts feeling inevitable. So if you're hovering at $82,000 or $97,000 or you just crossed $100,000 last month, don't stall here. This is the hardest milestone precisely because it tempts you to slow down. Stay aggressive a little longer. Protect the base. Increase the savings rate when income rises. Understand the six-figure trade-offs hidden in everyday decisions. And then watch what happens over the next decade. I'm genuinely curious. Where are you on this path right now? Are you below $50,000, close to $100,000? Past it and pushing toward 300, drop it in the comments. If this shifted your perspective even slightly, hit the like button so more people see it. And subscribe if you want more deep dives like this, because I promise you, the milestones get more interesting from here. You're closer than you think, but only if you don't stall.